And welcome back, one and all, to the Blue Rose Respite. You know, I love that weeb anime opening. Played every goddamn time. How's it going, everyone? Comstein, Denvo, Sleepy FA, wonderful to see you guys. Apologies for the slightly late start, but my computer decided it was a clever thing to crash right on 7:30. So I just spent a few minutes trying to fix that shit up. And so, yes, my apologies for slightly later, but we're still going to be going for the full length of the stream regardless. So, how are all of you guys doing? It's Wednesday, it's a day I think a lot of us are just waiting to kind of be done with. It's so hot here, guys. I know that it's mild in England compared to, you know, other parts of the UK and the world in general, but my apartment's really not built for withstanding against heat. So, I've been mostly at home recording stuff for mods, things like that, and sitting on a towel that I have folded up on my desk chair because it is that level of hot that I was sweating when I woke up. Yeah, gross. So how are all of you guys doing? I hope you're all managing to find your own ways to beat the heat. But if not, we're all here to cool down and unwind together. Because this is a relaxing stream, apparently. So, where we last left off, we were telling the story of Rebecca and her interesting growing relationship with Luke and Kylie, his goddaughter. Definitely, I think it was a good idea that we selected the option to go to dinner with Luke and Kylie, because they had, it was cute, and like, Luke is an asshole in a lot of ways, but he's got moments of genuine humanity, and yeah, it's almost like he's a well-rounded character. What? But we have a story to continue, specifically Rebecca's story. So, where we last left off, they were just finishing up dinner after an interesting conversation with Luke regarding Rebecca's current deep-seated crush that's been going on for quite some time. Thank you so much for the host, Fallout Kids. Holy shit, congratulations, Sleepy! Congratulations on the new job. Kudos to you. Kudos to you. Oh, best of luck with it. And hey, Garrett and Shadowfang are here. Awesome. Help me keep everyone in line. So, let us continue, shall we? The same wordless silence fills our short walk back to the school, except for when Luke gestures at a nearby flower shop and enters it without waiting for Kylie and I. He emerges minutes later carrying a bouquet of daffodils with the same softened expression back on his face. Unlike the previous ones, he tucks this one away almost as soon as he looks up at us, a moment he's not willing to share. In my confusion, he merely answers with a shrug and continues walking.
For someone important.
I accept it for what it is, if only because he doesn't owe me an explanation. It does leave more questions about him, each one as baffling as the previous ones. Those are the last words spoken this evening before we head our own ways. Up until I arrive home, I still can't understand him. Glad to hear you're enjoying London now, Fallout. Here, however, a whole different set of questions await me. And much like everything today, it comes with the littlest of things. A lone note greets me upon reaching my unit's door. Its edges flutter lightly against the faint, warm breeze passing through the small complex. My hand stops short of twisting the knob as I stare at it, though I don't make any moves to take it. Ashton's neat script lines its surface. Dropped by earlier, you weren't around. Any ideas where Scaredy Cat is? I couldn't contact her. Inspector Abigail has a few questions. LPD staff, something about her dead co-workers. Anyway, let me know how the two of you have been doing. I'll see you later, Ash. Look at that weave shit. The message he left, short and straight to the point, but not without the underlying hint of friendship. He's looking for Isabella, apparently. Something about LPD's investigation of her co-worker's death, but ends its formal tone by checking on me. Us. Any other day, the former part of his message would likely prod at the piercing envy I've been holding, while the latter would probably send my heart aflutter. Little things from him that I want to know mean something more. Yet, this time, only guilt fills me, and my eyes briefly shifts towards Isabella's empty unit. Luke's words repeat inside my head as I do so.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
Have I always been like this?
This selfish? In truth, I've intended to call Ash after that dinner. I didn't catch him here. Invite him to the party like I've planned. There's time he's still probably awake at about this hour. But my hands won't move. And perhaps it is for the better. Until I've had the time to think this through, it'll be best if I distance myself from those I've been clinging tightly to. Find a different perspective and see things for what they are. With a soft sigh, I reach for the note and crumple it under my hand. The knob twists open with much ease as I enter this time. Maybe after some introspection it'll be easier. For tomorrow, I have that woman and the mansion to worry about. The night wears on without further incident, despite the great number of thoughts swimming inside my head. Come morning, there's only a hush, a strange sort of stillness unlike the ones greeting me every morn. This one's uneasy, tight with anticipation, like a string stretched thin, merely waiting for the proper time to snap. Granted, it doesn't make my day any less pleasant, but the edge is here, there, everywhere. And as expected, the second I step out of my flat, it comes apart, broken by the voices of two squabbling adults echoing from a floor below. The quiet was nice while it lasted. Shame.
What the hell were you thinking?
I wasn't. Ow! Could you let go?
Not a few seconds later, they both ascend the stairs, with Ashton pulling Isabella by her wrist. She struggles, as she should, but his hold on her remains firm. Freeing herself means having to draw blood, as she attempts to pry his hand off her with the other one, or using unnecessary force to push herself away. Sleepy FA with 100 bits? Thank you! Sharing a small amount from my new fun job. Thank you so much for your generosity. That's so sweet of you. Aw. Fuzzy. Thank you. Neither of which is better than the other. One could potentially end in an accident, while the other means having to hurt him physically. She has good sense to realize that, at least. However, it doesn't take the desperate edge in her voice when she answers Ashton temper with her own. So on they go, none the wiser to my presence.
Do you have any idea how much trouble you could get in?
That's why I'm asking you for help.
Is this what you've been doing these past 3 days? Because this doesn't make your case convincing, Isabella.
Rose died, Ash.
I know. Every single person in Luxembourg knows. It's on the damn news. But that doesn't mean...
People are missing. Some of those are my friends. And the RC's just covering it all up.
You can't just barge into my office and expect me to do anything about it, right off the bat. This isn't a children's game, Isabella. We have procedures. We have to follow protocol. There's red tape all over this case for a reason. We sure as hell don't investigate things just because some stupid letter spooked us.
Ash, you have to believe me this time. If we don't do anything right now, more people will...
It's been a whole week. This stupid letter prank is getting old real fast. I'm sick of it. It was funny the first time, not so much now.
You're the only one that can help me with this, Ash. Even Rebecca won't.
All right, you two are awfully loud. What's going on here?
Both of their heads snap up, almost in unison. A displeased frown on each of their faces, but this is a necessary interruption. What can they do? People still in their units have already taken interest in the commotion, with some taking a peek behind their curtains, while others are bold enough to creak open their doors, if only slightly. If they don't keep it down, pretty soon our landlady will show up. Getting a reprimand from her is the last thing I want to happen, first thing on a Friday morning, even if this is hardly my fault.
Well, if you want to continue this, you two better do it elsewhere. You're disturbing other people.
Don't worry, we're done here.
No, we aren't. Becca, I looked it up. I called them. I visited some of them and...
Which you shouldn't have done in the first place. Isabella, you're going to create more problems for us with what you're doing. A team has already been assigned to it. Leave it to us.
Your precious team is looking at it the wrong way. Becca, it's not just Rose. There are others.
The last bit strikes a chord, prods strongly at a memory. At that vicious smile already etched deeply inside my mind. The image appears clear enough that, at the mere mention of it, I stumble on my own question.
What do you mean?
The letter, Rebecca! It's not...
It's nothing. If there's really something going on because of that dumb letter, none of us would be standing here. We've all read it, haven't we? But Rebecca's alive, Zach's alive, I'm alive. So for the last time, this isn't a curse. There's a murderer on the loose, and your co-workers happen to be the victims. Give it a rest, Isabella. It's too early for this shit.
You think that's too much for a coincidence?
Not so much. Most serial killers follow a pattern. I'll tell you that at some other time. And anyway, coincidence or not, the point is, civilians like you aren't supposed to get involved. You're putting yourself in danger.
I wasn't chasing after.
Will the both of you slow down and stop arguing for a minute? What's this about your coworkers, Val?
Becca, please don't tell me now you believe this shit.
Sure, in a heartbeat I'll agree with Ashton. That's how it's always been, besides having a very good point. Really, they're the very same ones he'll make every time I ask too many questions. But the fact of the matter is, he wants to hear from me right now is far from what I've been sensing these past few days. Doesn't matter what Isabella or I believe on our own. Something odd has been happening around me, and that letter she picked up is the heart of this. But how should I respond to in their faces? Only one of them will be pleased with it. Okay, Belle, you shouldn't be doing these things, or I might have seen her. Honesty is going to be the best thing for this, in my opinion. Yeah, just fess up, you've been seeing some weird shit. Ashton in particular won't be too happy to hear it. Imagining the look on his face doesn't take much effort. His entire posture shifts the moments my reluctance shows. Shoulders tensing, brows furrowing, eyes gaining a sharp edge. He's already bracing himself for the disappointment. And it will be a disappointment. Not in a million years did I ever believe I'll be saying this either.
I might have seen her. The woman Belle's been telling us about. The one she said she saw in the attic.
Both of them stare at me like I've grown an extra head, and for a few moments Ashton looks like he's about to have a fit. Pause threads at its heels after, a silence thick enough one can almost hear a pin drop.
You're kidding, right?
Do I look like I'm joking?
Really, Becca? Not funny.
Ash, I'm not lying. Why would I lie about this? It's been this way since the film fest. The past few days have been really odd since we read that letter.
Or maybe you're all just feeling under the weather.
I'm not sick. Don't you think I'd know that by now?
Becca, you're starting to sound like Scaredy Cat.
I do agree, Shadowfang. Ash seems to be blindsided to the whole thing. Yeah, he's, very frustratingly stubborn, isn't he?
Give me a break.
Why don't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you two.
Isabella's voice cuts sharply through the conversation, abruptly putting an end to the brewing argument.
It's all my fault. This is all my fault. I was only hoping I could fix this before any of you. Before I'm sorry for dragging you all into this.
She breathes in, deep, steadying, and in that moment something falls behind her eyes as she looks away.
I'll fix this. I promise.
A quiet resolve. Same one I saw in her that night from 3 days ago. But this time it burns brighter. Even Ashton wavers at its sight, when she looks him straight in the eyes, gaze unflinching. Gradually his grip on her wrist loosens.
Belle, there's nothing to fix. The problem is...
Just this once, Ash.
Her voice, though small and lacking any force, stops him. Along with it, every sound, every noise dies around us, a hush descending as if the world is waiting for her words.
You don't have to come with me. But if I don't do anything, I am going to regret it.
She lays a hand atop his. Gentle. Pleading. Almost intimate if one does not consider the circumstances we've found ourselves in.
Please.
Ashton will never tell a soul, will never admit it even to himself, but it is in that short second that his own resolve breaks. The moment the hard edge in his eye softens and he relinquishes his hold on her, letting his hand fall limply to his side. Wordlessly, Isabella steps back and runs off, leaving only a muttered thanks and a small, lackluster smile. Only after the last of her footsteps fade away does Ashton move, breaking the silence with one of his sharp exhales, before reaching up to pinch the bridge of his nose in a gesture of frustration and surrender.
Did you really have to tell her that?
What do you want to hear from me then? That everything's fine?
No, I want all of you to stop putting these ideas in her head. None of it is helping. Never mind. Don't worry about her. I'll bring her back here.
He's already poised to leave when my own instincts take over. I reach for him, gripping his elbow with the same unyielding grip, the action prompted by voices whispering at the back of my mind. He's already made it clear, sorry. He's not going to believe me, but he deserves a word of caution. Who knows where all this will take us, how all of this will end. He shouldn't be caught off guard, beliefs notwithstanding.
Ash, I know you don't believe in those things she's saying. And you know me. I'm less inclined to believe in those things as you do.
Cool, see you next time, Fallout. Take care. And yes, I hope your cousin's wedding goes smoothly and everyone has a wonderful time.
But I've seen something. There's something strange going on here. You don't have to buy it. If you don't want to listen to me, fine. But it's bad enough that Isabella goes off like this without telling anyone. I'm just worried something might happen to her if she keeps at it. Talk to her, okay?
As if she trusts me enough for that.
Doesn't the fact that she approached you first about this, instead of me, already say a lot?
A different kind of trust, granted implicitly and never spoken. Something too big, too fragile to last. He falls silent for a long moment as he turns it over in his mind. In the end, all he manages to offer is a small nod before he departs, and a promise to, at least, listen to her, without the teasing or the jibes. A favour for me, and the least he could do for her. This is as much as I can do for him as well, until I've understood what's happening myself. Tonight, hopefully, where this all started will provide the answers I'm looking for. Except the whole thing's off to a bad start, and all of a sudden, whatever Isabella claims dwelling in this mansion becomes the least of my concerns. Of all the cabbies in Luxburn, I have to chance upon the superstitious one. Still not as bad as finding out your car's starter refuses to crank on, when it was still working this morning, yes. But it's equally as frustrating when you're forced to walk the rest of the way. All because the driver got spooked. Isabella and him would get along so well. I do get his reasons. After all, I've had my fair taste of the bazaar lately. All of which might have been brought upon by the letter Isabella found here. But you think he'd, at least, be charitable enough to take me a little closer to the house itself, not at a distance 15 minutes away from it by foot. Good thing I'm not wearing anything too formal or constricting. Otherwise that short walk would have likely put me in a bad mood, long before I have to suffer in a room full of strangers tonight. Although this soon proves to be a problem the second the driveway comes into view and I near the entrance. Severely underdressed is a total understatement to describe how I look. Cars, worth more than my own apartment and childhood home combined, line the mansion's front yard. Men and women decked out in their best also flock near the entrance. Most are eager for the festivities to start, while some are simply idling about, enjoying the warm afternoon sun before it sets. But once the woman standing at the front porch speaks, their undivided attention immediately shifts to her. Presumably Mrs. Wright, from the confident manner she holds herself among present company. This, despite keeping a far simpler appearance than the rest of her own guests. Sorry, my brain's all over the place tonight. Far simpler appearance than the rest of her own guests, or not having her husband beside her. A trait worthy of utmost admiration at best. At worst, she's the envy of every woman, the subject of every gossip in Luxburn.
Welcome, welcome everyone.
And Mum said we could have been good friends? Can't even picture myself mingling with the kind of guests she has. Though I admit, she does seem familiar, now that I've seen her this close. Memories of sitting in a vanity not mine, being dressed in clothes too fancy for my tastes. They flit briefly in my mind, until her cheerful tone rises above the buzz of her enraptured audience again.
Please, make yourselves at home.
I wish I can share enthusiasm greatly. But being surrounded by all this extravagance, for the lack of a better term, merely makes me dread how the rest of the night might go. I shouldn't have let Luke's words affect me like that. I should have just gone ahead and asked Ashton like I planned. If he were here, then I wouldn't have to...
Be careful with Shirley, alright?
Gods damn it! The rest of that thought dies in my mind at once. A moment of astonishment overcomes me before confusion sets in seconds later. It takes another for my body to catch up. Once it does, when I finally turn to see it for myself, it's his familiar mop of hair that catches my eyes first. Oh. And there he is, almost an arm's reach if it isn't for the guest standing between us. Ashton Frey, standing in the Ermengarde mansion's driveway, with an air too lackadaisical for someone who absolutely abhors parties of any form. Or has any business here as far as I know. The picture it forms is too bizarre for me, that my mouth speaks out ahead of any coherent thought.
Ashton?
He swivels on his heel with an equally puzzled face. An odd expression flashes momentarily across it once he sees me, though he blinks it away before I can figure out what it is exactly.
Becca, what are you doing here?
I was invited.
Really? I had no idea you were friends with the host.
Well, it's my parents, actually. But that's beside the point. What are you doing here? You hate parties.
I still do. I'm just here on behalf of a friend.
That in itself is weird coming from him. It doesn't help that he isn't even making an effort to spare a glance my way when he answers. Instead, they're focused at some point in the crowd. His gaze darting between people walking past us, until a small frown forms on his face.
That's rare. Do you have someone with you then?
Nope, just me. I won't be staying long.
Oh, well, if that's the case, maybe you and I can...
Chief?
Ashton, what's...
Unexpectedly, he places a hand on my shoulder, stopping me mid-sentence. He still has the distracted look on him, except this time his eyes are sharper, as if he has found what or who he's been searching for among the throng of partygoers earlier.
Sorry, Becca. I need to... There's something I need to check for a bit. I'll talk to you later. Do you have a ride home?
No, I had to take a cab here. My car wouldn't start this afternoon. But what about...
I told you to get that old thing checked before, didn't I? You can head back with me after this. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya. Be careful, okay?
I meet the smile he hastily throws my way with a frown of my own. What does he mean by that? But before I can ask, already he has turned his back from me and is walking away, without a single explanation whatsoever. In some desperate effort I try to catch up to him, if only to know what warranted this sudden departure and his odd warning at the end.
Hey, be careful! About what exactly?
Only for my attempts to be interrupted by a muffled ringing from my pocket. Mum's cheerful voice greets me as soon as I answer.
Yes, I'm at the party already, Mom. Yes, I'll say hi to her if I can.
The conversation itself doesn't last long. Just a simple hello, a reminder to enjoy the party and to send their regards to the old student. When the call ends and I get to look up, Ashton's already nowhere in sight. With a sigh and, admittedly, a little disappointment, I tuck my mobile back into my pocket and head inside. Even with familiar company, however coincidental this meeting is, this is somehow shaping up to a terrible evening. Party hits full swing an hour later. With the host's opening remarks given, still no sign of her husband, the poor woman, and the guests promptly fed, the band shifts the melody to a livelier tune. Soon, laughter and the rhythmic tapping of shoes fill the room, all in accordance to the lifting strains of music. It seems fun, I admit. Fascinating at certain moments, the flurry of dancers making the music their own, almost with no care in the world. If it weren't so indisposed, I'd have joined the crowd for a song or two. There isn't a lack of invitations anyway, Plenty of them, in fact, with some asking more than once. It's only my stubborn refusal that prevents me from joining them. And I can. A single nod is all it'll take, and the evening would have been far more enjoyable for me. But pride in my own silly hopes, the thoughts of being seen with one of them by him, curbs that, as much as I hate to admit it. Because doing so also means outright knowledge the douche's claims. That he has to be the one to tell me that he has to be the one telling me that still sends my blood boiling. I would have preferred someone more agreeable, less of an arse. It's a hard truth to swallow, especially when the very person at the centre of it makes denial difficult. Can't even spare me a minute of his attention, or a single glance at me the whole evening. Hell, Zackery might have spoken more words to me. The big guy's busy covering the event to boot. But at least he manages to slip in a conversation or two between takes, or a small wave of his hand when he passes by. What's Ashton's excuse? He's been flitting in and out of sight the whole time. One moment he's hanging around a small group, in another he's hovering around the string band. Just a second ago he's wolfing down some deviled eggs by the buffet table, a glass of wine in hand. The next thing I know, he's gone. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he doesn't want to be with any of his friends. Is it because his boss is here? What's the big deal about that? It's never bothered him before.
I swear, the next person who asks, I'm dancing the night away with. Ashton can go fuck himself.
You would catch his eye a lot better if you wore nicer clothes, don't you think?
Her voice also almost makes me jump, focused on the gobshite wandering around the ballroom and my own annoyance to notice. If she's heard any of the profanities I've mumbled, or she's taken notice of my discomfiture, she makes no comment on it, merely greeting me with a smile when I turn my attention to her. Miss Hannah Wright gives a whole different air when she's not speaking to an audience. Homely, a bit too friendly for my liking. But I guess that comes from being raised in such an environment, and having to deal with pompous, snooty people. Though I suppose nothing has really changed from years ago. I remember her carrying herself in the same manner during that one and only visit. Does she remember any of it? I won't be surprised if she doesn't. It has taken me a while myself. She's probably met a lot of people like little Becky throughout the years. Might have already forgotten about me or my parents. People like her thrive on connections after all. Nevertheless, I return her smile, awkward and stiff as it may be.
Didn't realize the housewarming was going to be this fancy. I would have gone with a nice dress if I knew.
Oh, you're fine, dearie. It's only really the parvenu, those who climb, that come to these parties all dolled up. Quite the black-haired beauty, isn't he?
It takes me a while to realise who she's talking about. Till Ashton walks by again, in closer proximity than any of the times he's done so far this evening. Still without a look of acknowledgement our way, though, even if Miss Wright speaks loud enough to catch the attention of anyone within earshot.
Who, Ash?
You know, you really shouldn't have turned down his offers. If I wasn't married, I'd happily go dancing with those young men. But you said a name. Ash. That's the exquisite lad you've been looking at all this time. I don't know him, and I'm the one hosting this party. That must mean you know each other. Is he your boyfriend then? Because that would explain those rejections.
This isn't the first time someone has made that assumption. Almost every student I've had in the past did. My co-workers, more often than not, assume he is. A few of my neighbours also think we're an item. Not that Ashton's ever reacted to those. He's quite indifferent about it, in fact. Still, the heat of a blush creeps up my cheeks. A denial ready, despite wanting it to happen so badly myself.
What? No, that's ridiculous. He isn't my boyfriend.
Such a violent reaction. A simple no would have sufficed. Many here would be happy to hear it.
And I haven't been looking at him.
I do my best to summon a straight face, but before her good cheer, it easily falters.
That's right. You've been staring. Quite heatedly, in fact. Although I'm not sure if you look like you want to kiss him or kill him.
It's more the latter currently.
Just don't go murdering him on my property. I don't want to walk into a room and suddenly find a body there.
It's infectious in a way. No sooner I found myself enjoying our chat more than I've imagined myself to. Although her attention briefly wavers at one point, she remains a good companion. Even more once I've mentioned who my parents are, her face quickly lights up and fondness graces her face, despite the meeting from several years ago being a short one. But of course there are some things we really can't avoid talking about. After all, it's one of the few things I remember her asking me the moment she spotted little Becky in the room. Do you have a boyfriend? In retrospect, it's an odd thing to ask about as children, when there are loads we could have started with.
Yes, oh, I remember you. You were the cutest little thing with glasses. And when we met, you were having boy troubles with this lad called something with an A.
I believe I still have the clothes she gave me, chosen all so that I could press him. And even back then, Ashton has always been denser than a rock, and that one attempt to get him to notice backfired spectacularly. Sure, he's keen, he's a detective for heaven's sake, but feelings, more often than not, escapes him.
What was it again? Aaron, Adele, Albert, Alexander, Andrew?
Which makes this whole talk all the more embarrassing. And the more names she lifts off, the more my discomfort grows, till my smile turns into a grimace. What will she think of me? Here she is, married to a man she most probably loves, at that. While I'm still stuck in the same place, yearning for the same person.
Ashton! Ash! That man is that boy! The same one. Oh, goodness me, after all these years! I can see why, though. He's quite dashing.
You don't really need to announce it to everyone within earshot, you know?
Oh, Rebecca.
Down.
It's so cute when you're embarrassed.
I'm so sorry, but it really is cute.
Agreed. She says that, but for a short moment, a hint of pity flickers in her eyes. I take it as a chance to change the subject, before anything more could be said over the matter. I haven't even figured out how I should feel about the things Luke told me, and I'm getting dragged into a similar discussion.
This is a nice party, Miss Wright.
Though, to be frank, I doubt she'll be so willing to pass this up. The topic has already captured her attention.
Please, Hannah's fine. We're friends of a sort, aren't we? We must be friends, seeing as I know about your little infatuation, Becky. Don't you worry, dearie. You'll have your happy ending yet.
I'm not too concerned about that, am I? That's not what I'm looking for.
Oh? And what makes you think that? Doesn't everybody want their happy ending?
The idea of happy endings sounds like they're just for fairy tales. And they are, sorta. I don't think you can just sit around, trapped in some tower and hope for the best. If you love them, you have to fight for it, right? You're not just going to sit there and hope that everything will just fix itself on its own. Like everything, you have to work at it.
Hypocrisy, that's what this is. How dare I preach about something when I know it's exactly what I've been doing? And then... I go and act as if I'm entitled to any of it. That, by virtue of us growing up together, must return what I feel for him. That he's not allowed to look at another, because I'm the one who has stayed by his side the longest. When, in the first place, Ashton has always been his own person. This is something I cannot force on him. I can only hold on to these, take care of it, until the time comes I can confess it to him. Great if he reciprocates, but if he can't, if he won't, selfish. I've been so selfish. Too selfish, rather. How laughable that Luke's words still strike true up until now.
But what do I know?
I'm sure the daughter of the two greatest professors I've ever known is smart enough to know what she's talking about.
At one point, maybe I would have easily agreed to that. However, the past weeks have also seen changes in the way I view things. As nice as these things sound, it turns out whatever I've previously known may not be true for other people, or for myself. It is sobering and almost funny how things I might have said with much certainty before, now as doubts muddy each of them. But there will be time to mull about these later, because when a hush suddenly descends in the room, a whole different issue rears. Especially when fucking Luke, strides into the now quiet ballroom, fashionably late and oozing with the same pompous mien he's always carried around with him.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Enjoying the party? I hope I'm not too late in welcoming you all to the Wright Mansion.
Before long, Hannah leaves my side to join him, and it doesn't take a genius to piece it all together.
Welcome one and all to our humble abode. Tonight, if you have yet to find yourself in your roles, you are our ladies and lords of the court of your king and queen. If you would excuse my presumptuousness. So, enjoy the feast that has been laid out for your senses as we only allowed the best to be served. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone.
His attitude, the manner he carries himself around people, his unfamiliarity with that part of the city. Of fucking course. I should have known. Although I'm partly at fault here. Tabloids and the gossip columns have never been really my thing. For someone who takes his job seriously as a detective, he's not too smart when it comes to detecting a woman's feelings for him. I agree, he's much more like logic-based than emotion-based, so... Ashton and Luke, why are you so frustrating? But especially Luke. I should have also expected that wherever Luke fucking Wright is, some sort of drama will sure follow. Seems the kind of person who revels in it. Figures it'll find him on its own, even when he's not asking for it. It happens amidst a round of applause and hoots, that people lagging behind the crowd they've gathered does not catch on, till the cheers turn into several scandalized gasps.
I am pregnant with your little bastard. You promised me you'll take responsibility. God damn it, Luke. I finally got you to talk to me after months of silence, and you do this to me.
What do you mean you're pregnant with Luke? Is this true?
Lies and slander, woman! Security! Johannes, take her out of here before she makes an even bigger fool of herself!
No, you do not do this to me. I was so ready to leave my stupid oaf of a husband. I told you to leave that damn wife of yours. Look at her. Does she look like she wants a baby? Does she look like she could take care of a baby?
The commotion doesn't go further, despite the drunk woman appearing like she has plenty more venom to spill. In a little while, security shows up, escorting her out. Apparently she's the chief inspector's wife, too. If the whole thing can't get any more fucked up than it already is. What a mess. But the damage has been done, and beyond the repercussions this'll bring, I'm more worried about Hannah. Maybe Luke too, in part. I've seen the man that hides behind his self-importance, and is someone who cares for the person who stands beside him. No matter how questionable that is now. After all, no anger is worse than that of a scorned woman. And Hannah, well, as refined and well-mannered she is in front of their guests, I'm not sure if she'll be all too willing to tolerate this. Her party, her home, her husband, that woman has just dared to walk all over it. Yet when I glance at her, there's only defeat, a weary slump on her shoulders and a certain depth to her breathing, like the fight has already been drained out of her long ago. I don't know since when this has been going on. I don't know either of them well to judge for myself. I'm simply an outsider who happens to have some kind of connection with both of them. The air of a person who wishes for respite, it's all too easy to see it in her. She quietly watches the commotion carry on around her. In a moment, before I can think it through, I'm pulling her to the side and waving Zackery over to us.
Becca, this is a real oh, hey, Miss Wright.
Hello, Zackery. I told you to call me Hannah. Did I not?
Yeah, you did.
Admittedly, this air of familiarity between them catches me off guard. I won't put it past Hannah. Her standing in society compels her to keep appearances. The be nice to everyone sort of thing. While Zackery's growing client base sometimes calls for rubbing elbows with the rich and famous. Though from the way it appears, this one seems to go beyond maintaining a facade or work. I wonder how this friendship came to be. I'd asked, but was starting to attract some curious eyes. Most of them were probably searching for more gossip, something to add fuel to the fire. Thankfully, there's no need to explain it to Zackery. He's aware of the situation all too well.
So, this is what you called me for? We gonna get Hana out of here?
That'd be great.
Soon he's leading the three of us out of the ballroom. Anyone who dares speak or approach on the way out, I shut down with a sharp glance. And a few steps we're out, away from the commotion and the suffocating tension. I don't stay long with them, though. Even if I want to, Ashton's still somewhere in that crowd. I've got to go back for him, at least. No matter how much the idea of that alone sends an unpleasant twinge in my stomach.
Hey, I gotta go back in there. Completely forgot my bag like an airhead, and I'll see if I can tag Ash on the way out. You'll be fine here, right, Hana?
Not to worry, dearie. I'll just be right here.
Zack will be with you if you need anything.
Besides, it seems Zackery can handle this without another person helping out. In fact, for some reason I've got this strange impression I might be intruding on something if I elect to remain. Better to entrust this with someone she's comfortable with. And, though it might appear a little inappropriate considering what has transpired, a smile worms its way to my lips as I leave. Good on them, I suppose. Chat has exploded throughout the whole ballroom once I return. Worried murmurs, clicking of tongues, and inappropriate gossip filters through the thick tension in the room. Most of them haven't even left the premises, and they're already talking about it. Tomorrow it'll be on the news for sure, in every local broadcast and tabloid in Luxburn. No wonder Luke's knee-deep into damage control. The scandalous woman gone, he's turned his attention on the media covering the event. Though, so far, he isn't faring well in the clean-up department.
Now, people, we all know the drill. I'm sure you're all itching to get a start on those articles.
Good thing Zackery isn't here. Can't imagine a man of his temperament dealing with someone like him.
What if I read one word, see one picture about this come morning, even a single shot of the bloody wine glass the harlot held? You will all lose more than your jobs.
Luke's diatribe goes on for another few minutes, after which he excuses himself out of the area. There's a brief lull, a reluctant pause, before the place becomes astir again, but shortly the buzz returns. Dancers have once again taken to the floor and their guests' excited talk begins anew. Oops. But I couldn't care less about any of this now. Simply standing in the middle of it already gives me a headache. When the shock has faded, I just feel bone tired. I've accomplished nothing of what I've come here for, and apparently Ashton's disappeared sometime during the commotion. Not sure what pisses me off more. That he ignored me the whole evening and might have just left without saying anything, or knowing he obviously has some other motive for being here. Can't he at least trust his own friends for that?
He didn't have to hide it from me.
It's the last straw. No longer in the mood, I grab my bag and head out, more than ready to end the disastrous night as early as possible. As it turns out, the night isn't done with me yet. Because no sooner has the porter closed the door behind me, I found myself standing alone in the foyer with one Luke Wright. Of fucking course! No sign of Hana or Zackery. Just him and the agitated clicks his shoes make, while he treads around the empty room. Away from the media's prying eyes and their guests' judging stares, it's easy to glean how much of this scandal has shaken him. Not to the point where he has utterly lost his composure, he appears to have mastered himself enough not to. But an ample opening is there for a nervous edge to show on the lines of his shoulders.
What do you know?
The man is not as tough as he makes himself out to be. Sure, I've seen this before, briefly in that 1 second in the hallway at school. It's a strange matter, however, to witness this out in the open. Behind closed doors, this is the real Luke Wright. Though, maybe, that's because he hasn't noticed my presence yet, busy as he is with his thinking. If he's aware, I doubt he'll be acting like this. His pride is one thing he'll always wear with him. Even now, when I place a gentle hand on his shoulders, and he whirls around to face me, there's a second-long moment of anger flashing across his features, before it dissolves into confusion. He tucks it away as quickly as he can, but it does nothing to change the impression I've built of the man in my head.
Daisy, must you be everywhere?
You know what? I could say the exact same thing to you, dear.
We've only met 3 times, Luke. Quit the dramatics. Besides, shouldn't you be aware of who gets invited to your party?
If I was, there wouldn't be any of that scene tonight. That munter wouldn't even get an inch within this property. I'd bear off Luxport if I could.
Probably pawns everything off to his servants and Hana. Pompous elitist douche.
Did you just come out here to lecture me about it? Because, Daisy, I can already feel one coming tomorrow. I don't need to hear one from you tonight.
You are a very unpleasant man.
So I've been told. Will that be all? If so, I suggest you go back and join every bloody goss in that room.
Not everything. As unpleasant and frustrating talking with this man is, he deserves the benefit of the doubt, at least. Questions and criticism aren't lacking, of course. But right at this instant, there's only one that comes to mind. Asking if that scandal is true is kind of like rubbing salt in the wound. Yeah, Luke, you're an asshole, but you should just be with your wife. Like, support her. Because Rebecca's trying, kind of. So, I think the top one's rubbing a little bit too much salt in the wound. And she's trying to, like, get better glimpses of him as a person, so... And she also doesn't know about the state of their marriage and the fact that they're going to get a divorce or something, so be with your wife.
You know, brooding over here isn't going to fix this mess.
Again with the lecture.
Will you stop calling it that?
Very well, what should we call this then? A heart-to-heart? Please don't, I might puke. And just so you know, I don't want to talk about feelings. Ever.
This isn't one, alright? It's just a friendly concern. Bloody hell, can't you just take it for what it is?
He pauses at that. Suddenly, he doesn't know what to do with his hands, and in the end, he simply stuffs them back into his pockets and sulks. Yet, there probably aren't many people who tell him that. He's a difficult man to get along with, after all. I honestly won't give him a second of my time if I didn't see a different side to him. Dealing with him requires more than patience. When the awkwardness passes, mostly coming from him, he merely glances away. But the tightness in his shoulders has eased when he speaks again. Despite his rather rude choice of words, none has any venom in it.
Friendly concern, right. While we're at it, I should mention that Hana used to call that Viper friend. Now I think she might want to strangle the munter if she sees her again. After she's done with me, of course.
I doubt she's going to do anything like that.
What do you even know about this?
Oh, I know enough. You may look like a sleazy douche, and you still are, by the way.
It's almost comical how fast his face shifts from mild disdain to offended, but I don't let it distract me. These things need to be said, and he needs to hear them. Even though they're coming from some meddling stranger.
But you have your few good moments. I might even say that you're a decent person, if I'm in the mood. Now go. If you really love her, you've got to try and fix this yourself.
Maybe tomorrow.
Luke.
Daisy, did you see her earlier? Was that the face of a wife who wants to have a chat with her cheating husband?
Well, at least you admitted you did something wrong. Good for you. How about a star? Would you like a star to go with that good deed?
Oh, Rebecca, so much salt!
Don't get used to it. Do you realize how awkward this is?
Oh, I do.
Before I've even thought about what to say, I've known there can only be 2 ways this can go. All things considered, it isn't as bad as I've assumed. However, there are still some things my brand of encouragement can't fix. His marital problems, first and foremost, his attitude follows right after. Concerns aside, I can't help with those. Those are things only he can fix, and it's definitely not by standing around here bantering.
Don't worry, I was just about to leave. Feel free to continue with your brooding once I'm gone. I'm not going to tell anyone. Cross my heart.
You think this is funny, Daisy?
Yes, it is. Laughter is the only response I give him. With a slight wave of my hand, I end it right there and walk away. Would you like some salt with your salt? You have been charged with assault. Although I can't resist the urge to glance back before I leave, if only to have one last look at the man he really is. But the instant I turn my gaze on him, I see it. Looming, hovering over his shoulders, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. Like the first time I've stepped inside this place in search of Isabella. He was there too, wasn't he? That man, along with his wife and another person. Miss McCullough? And that shadow. No. A woman now. Her. No longer a dark blur. Terror rushes through every vein in my body. A crippling sensation gripping every part of me, while she stares at me with a glare filled with nothing but hate and venom. It's like staring at the eyes of a woman I've unknowingly robbed of something precious. I try to say something. A warning. But before I can gather my wits and voice it out, someone shuts the door behind me. As if to keep outsiders away from the secrets this mansion possesses. The rush of fresh air against my cheeks does little to dampen the chill in my bones. By now the sensation, the fear and disquiet, it leaves whenever I see her. It's familiar enough to me. Already has made a home in my nerves. I don't even notice my trembling hands until I cross my arms across my chest. The cold from the tips of my fingers sleeps through the thick material of my shirt. Thick metal of my shirt? Body armor. Neither of it helps bring together some semblance of coherent thought in my head. But I know I should.
Someone has to tell that douche.
Excuse me. I start walking back before fear can cripple me again. It's not wise. Returning, that is, especially after what happened. But Han is still an old friend, and Luke doesn't deserve whatever misfortune that letter may bring. I just can't leave those two in there. Isabella's right. She's real, and there's something she wants from everyone who has read that.
Becca, where'd you go off to?
If you're done here, let's go! Get you back to the city. My mistake. The second his voice cuts through the crisp night air is that I've allowed my annoyance get the better of me. Fuming, purpose forgotten, I whirl around and march towards him. One accusation after another piles up on the tip of my tongue, ready to be hurled at any moment. There's no hesitation holding me back when I fling it at him. That straight face he keeps as I do so doesn't help temper my anger either. It only makes me want to slap some more sense into him.
Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?
Becca, I've been waiting here the whole time since that mess in the hall. I told you I hate parties like...
And before that, where have you been the entire evening?
Right then and there, I might have forgiven him if he's shown some ounce of remorse for leaving me like that. Maybe he could have looked away, given me a sign that my assumptions might be right. Doesn't even need to put them into words. A single gesture of confirmation is all I need. Rather, what I get is the same impassive look. He does that whenever he can't disclose anything. He does that whenever he is lying. The face of it, amidst the thick tension, a frustrated huff is the only thing I can summon.
Be that way. Fine. Suit yourself.
I agree, like, the face of the ghost in that last clip was just so unsettling. Her smile is so creepy. And yeah, it did kind of remind me a little bit of, like, maybe not the Colossal Titan, but the one that eats Aaron's mom. That really unsettling smile. Bad memories. No more words. After everything I've seen and heard tonight, I'm ready to exhaust her for those. So, without speaking any further, I simply walk past him and stomp over his car. Although, before I can pull open the door, he calls out, one hand outstretched, a gentle weight on my shoulders.
Wait, Becca.
He pauses, his brows furrowing and lip curving into a slight frown. I can almost see the gears turning in his head, while he tries to piece together everything he wants to say. Before, perhaps, I might have waited patiently for those. He's not a man fond of using words to express himself. More often than not, any gesture of honesty will only come out blunt and coarse when forced. But today, for one reason or another, I simply can't summon that forbearance.
Ashton, if if you're just going to waste my time again...
Becca, listen. I don't know how else...
That much is obvious. Why don't you just take the whole bloody night? Go on. I can wait until next year. Better yet, why don't you just keep it all to yourself like you always do? It's not like...
Rebecca, will you hear me out first?
The silence I can offer him, but whether I'll believe what he's about to say is still up for debate. A very long debate.
I honestly don't know how else to put this. I'm aware your parents have some kind of history with Hana Wright, and somehow you're friends with her. But you should stay away from these people for now, especially the husband.
Who? Luke?
His expression deepens into a scowl at the mention of the name, but whatever opinion he has, he doesn't immediately voice. Still, something about it has greatly displeased him, evident in the stiff tone his note assumes.
Yeah, he's bad news.
It's my turn to frown this time. What does he mean by that? What does he have to do with this, or care to explain your reasons? A little bit of explanation would be nice, Ashton. Like, that sounds a little bit too much like Rebecca's defending Luke. Which she shouldn't be. Like, she's seeing the humanity in him, but she's not his best friend, so... Care to explain?
Care to explain your reasons?
I've not meant for it to sound as harsh as it does, but anger and frustration have never been a good match for me, particularly on nights like this. It's not surprising when Ashton jerks away as if I've struck him. For a fleeting moment, something akin to hurt darts across his features, his eyes narrowing and his hands closing and fists tightly at his sides. Then, swiftly, he glances away and shifts his focus on a line of trees nearby, like an answer can be gleaned from the dark expanse.
I'm really sorry, Becca.
What is it for? For the party? The vague answers he continues to give? Does it include all those times before this? The year's worth of it? I don't doubt its sincerity. However, at the moment, the forgiveness he's asking isn't something I'm all too willing to hand, furious as I am. It's frankly a wonder how I can keep myself from raising my voice at him.
We'll talk about this tomorrow. And you better have a proper answer for me by then.
There's a brief hesitation before I step away, a short moment of wanting to say more, of waiting if he has anything to add. He's only silent, eyes still trained at a distance. It is the last glimpse I see of him before I climb inside his car. If the door slams closed with the same force as the anger I'm holding, its sound merely vanishes into the night unnoticed. He follows soon after, and shortly we're on our way back to the city. Julian, how's it going? Welcome back to the Blue Rose Respite. Glad you could join us this evening. Yet, even with the city's bright lights welcoming us, the dense, somber air from the mansion still lingers. The moon is almost at its highest by the time we reach Salem Well. Even after our respective heads have cooled off, the atmosphere within the car remains rife with unspoken tension. This isn't a problem so easily fixed with a few handshakes. Quite frankly, I don't know what will. Ashton himself has no idea what to do when he alights and dawdles awkwardly in the middle of the car park, unsure. It almost seems like he's having an internal debate, whether he should say goodbye or mutter another apology. I could have driven him away, purely out of spite, the second I've gotten off. Still, old habits die hard. It's late, and Ashton's flat is on the other side of the city. Irritation might still rear its head every time I look at him right now, but I'm not too cruel to put him up for another long drive, especially when he still appears as if he hasn't gotten any rest.
You can borrow the couch.
I throw the keys to my flat his way before a protest forms on his lips. Although he catches it with ease, he eyes it with a wary expression and shoots a puzzled glance my way.
You haven't been forgiven. We're still going to have that talk, believe me. But I'm not about to send you out on another drive looking like that. It's late. Go get some rest.
We're setting aside a lot of loose ends like this, but he appears to have accepted that reason, at least in the meantime. He does give me another questioning glance when I shove past him, pulling my mobile in the process.
Where are you going? I thought...
You go ahead upstairs. I need to contact Professor Andrew.
Andrew? Why would you... Oh, no. Please. Is this that thing Isabella said this morning? Again? I already gave her my word, Becca. I'll look into this BRC crap. No need to drag the old guy into it.
Of course he's still skeptical. It makes one wonder if he's even seeing anything at all. Figures this curse will stay away from the scoffer. Oops. But this is another loose end tonight, and I can't just leave it alone. Ashton's beliefs notwithstanding. It just so happens that it's one I can delve into using means other than taking a look at the mansion itself.
Ashton, do you really think I still give a shite after that stunt you pulled tonight?
No, but this is...
I've spent so many years with him to know this is about to turn into an argument, another argument. Sorry for my muddled words tonight, guys. Bleh. I was recording earlier today, and lots of shoutings, so my voice is a little hoarse, and I'm a little bit tongue-tied, but let us continue. Before he can finish it, I cut him off with a firm raise of my hand.
Look, I don't care. There are weird things happening around here. And yes, it's Isabella's brand of weird. Ghostly voices, strange sounds, and a bloody woman sitting at the back of my car. You don't have to believe me. And I no longer have the patience to convince you, so just leave me be, Ashton.
He doesn't push it, growing quiet instead, although I know he has a whole case of it prepared inside his head. But there's a reluctant shift in his movement when he steps away from our conversation. Short of climbing the stairs, he stops, turns to face me with an expression almost too... conflicted?
Are you really sure?
What?
That there was something? That you've been, seeing things?
Yes, I'm very, very certain. Now go, and you better not break anything in there. The last time I let you stay over, it was that statuette Belle gave me. You haven't even replaced that one.
The last of my reprimand goes both unhearded and unanswered, as he disappears behind the steps. I haven't yet checked out Lovecraft Untold Stories, I'm sorry. It's been a crazy few weeks, so I'll probably check it out either tonight or tomorrow. If things aren't as strained, he might have had a quip or two about that, followed by a light banter. I can read. Instead, for a long moment, I'm left staring after him. There's something in the way he asks it that nags. Coupled with his expression, the whole exchange just feels unsettling. One that doesn't fade even as I gather my thoughts and shift my focus on another, even as I dial Professor Andrews' number. And that is when it clicks. During the long wait for the professor, one stray thought emerges from the unease. Ashton has not intended for his question to be a jibe. I can read, Denvo. I can read. It's concern. For what, though? For my well-being? The letter's curse? The woman I mentioned? The answers for those will have to wait, however. Finally, the call connects and Professor Andrews' voice echoes from the receiver.
Professor Andrew?
Rebecca? It's late. What can I do for you?
I know, I'm sorry, but this is a bit urgent.
After all, this is a more pressing matter. Our lives might be at stake and we're still in the dark.
Actually, I was wondering if I could ask you to do me a favor.
Professor Andrew Clark has agreed to meet me 2 days later, in front of Luxman's private library. He has other commitments, but being a long-time family friend has its perks. I have my parents' connections to thank for that. Of course, I'm not the sort to impose on him often, but the situation is... well, it's not entirely bad, although it does require calling in a few favours from friends like him. Without his signature, I won't be able to gain access to the library's restricted section. If I want to get more in-depth information on the Ermengarde mansion, that is. Not simply what they choose to show to the general public. As much as I hate to admit it, there's always something people censor, or whatever it is, I won't ever find it in the general section. Has to be what they're keeping here, beyond the public eye. The thought of that alone makes me antsy. Thankfully, I don't have to brood over it. The wait for the professor doesn't last long. He never did enjoy making people wait. Likewise, he dislikes people who are tardy. He arrives 5 minutes after I do, greeting me with that kind smile and casual wave of his hand. I haven't seen him in so long, but it appears he hasn't changed much. His familiar presence alone is enough for a fond smile to spread across my face.
Professor Andrew.
Rebecca, didn't I say long ago you can drop the professor?
You know I can't possibly do that. Even if I can, it feels disrespectful to call you by your name alone.
Both you and Ashton never listen to this old man. Kids these days.
All right. But just for today, since you're doing me a huge favor, Andrew.
I guess you simply can't have it all, even at this old age. But pleasantries aren't what we're here for, yes? You mentioned you needed a permit.
Yes, sir, if that's okay with you.
More than fine. Anything in pursuit of knowledge, as they say.
He hands me the permit without further prompting. And just like he promised, he's also written a recommendation after a signature. This is more than enough to get me those files. I mutter a small thanks before slipping it into my pocket. Though when I look back up, his brows are furrowed, a very face of curiosity. Not surprising, considering how vague I've been during our little talk over the phone. Right then and there, I've decided to tell him if he ever asks. Maybe not all of it, but stuff he needs to know. It's the least I can do to thank him. As expected, true to his inquisitive nature, he asks.
If you don't mind, though, I know you've always been an eager learner, but may I know what in the restricted section that piqued your curiosity?
It's the Ermengarde mansion, sir.
He's quick to raise an eyebrow at that, and for a while I fear he'll take the slip of paper back. Is there something in what I said?
The ones they have out in the general isn't enough?
I'm, hoping for a more in-depth read, sir. More about the history and the people who once lived there. The general section doesn't have anything much on that.
Oh, I see. Well, you certainly aren't the first one to be enamored with that place. It doesn't shock me. The architecture is admirable, and the urban legends are something to talk about. Why, just this past week, I've got a few asking me about that. Imagine that.
I think enamored might be a little too much to describe our interest in it. But I have to agree. The mansion is beautiful, even with the renovations. They kept the stained glass windows, too. They are magnificent.
Oh, you've seen it.
I was there for a few hours to attend a housewarming party. The invitation was for my parents, but they couldn't make it. My mum used to work as a private tutor for the Evans. Hannah Wright?
Ah, I know of her. Her husband, too. Who doesn't? Luxborn's most popular couple.
Something falls behind his eyes, the warmth in them suddenly gone, like he's reliving a painful, distant memory and seeing it play right in front of him. It disappears almost as soon as it surfaces, but that look has unsettled something in me.
Is something the matter?
Nothing much. But you know, you're already like a daughter to me. So if you could, do be careful with the friends you make.
Is this about the rights, sir?
Just a friendly advice from an old man. Don't think much about it. Anyway, I have to leave now. Can't miss my weekly serving of bear claws.
So good.
Say hi to your parents at the detective inspector for me, will you? I wish you luck with all that research.
I will. Thanks for this, Andrew.
Andrew gives my shoulder a light squeeze. The gesture a younger me has always appreciated, and quickly crosses the street after. I watch him until he disappears behind the door to a cafe, until the doubt swimming inside my head finds a moment to rest. Whatever his business is with the rights isn't anything I should concern myself about. But somehow, in the grand scheme of things now, all of it feels oddly relevant. The how, though, I've yet to find out. And I'm hoping the library will give me the answers I want this time. On a gloomy Sunday morning, the library is especially empty. The second floor in particular. I've always considered this place to be a sanctuary, a respite away from the hubbub of the city. As a child, I grew up reading books here, spending hours here to no end, poring over the pages, living out fantasies in my head until my parents called me home. Now, it feels nothing like it. Silence is smothering, suffocating. Even with how clean they've kept the microfile room, how the entire small of it lacks a speck of dust or clutter, breathing is a struggle for air. Not far into my stay, I begin to long for the noise outside, and perhaps as a way to calm with this unease, I start to hum a tune. Don't think much about when someone tells you that. Prepare for shit to go down. Yeah, sounds about right. Imagine that. Why of all things it has to be that silly nursery rhyme I've not got an inkling. It does its job, however. It fills the lull with something far less awkward, far less deafening, and that is enough for the distraction. I have business here. No time for silly daydreams, only important work to attend to. Even if there's a possibility of it being fruitless by some means, it feels like I have to do it. If not for me, then for the people who have been affected by this. What do we even call this? A haunting? Yes. A Halloween prank gone wrong? A curse? Yes. If Isabella were here, what would she say? Will she panic? Will she be angry if I only listen to her now? All stems from that one moment in the movie house, doesn't it? Could have avoided this had we only taken her warnings to heart. One stupid mistake is all it took to send our normal lives on a downward spiral. Sorry. Excuse me. Frankly, I'm no longer sure if I'm angry at myself for it or at the universe for throwing us into this mess. We can only make do with what little we have, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Going here might not be the right decision, but it's a start.
A good start.
It doesn't take much for me to find what I need. A microfile of the old newspapers, long kept in special storage cabinets at the far end of the restricted section. The year is 1620s and beyond. Before the city of Luxburn even exists in the records, and the mansion has just been built. And Anselm is nothing more than a small, sleepy hamlet near the river. A lot of pieces are missing. Days, sometimes several consecutive weeks without any records remaining. Often it goes on for years. Troublesome, but as it is, I'm lucky enough to find anything at all considering how far I'm looking back. Can't be picky now. Can't waste time mulling over what record keepers of the old could have done to make this a breeze for me.
I can still work with this.
The faint whir of the microfilm machine keeps me company as I go over each slide, each image, hoping for something that goes beyond what the local law knows. There are snippets, little mentions of the family that once settled in the house here and there. The usual singing of praises of the couple who helped brought up what was once a tiny settlement into a buzzing town. Nothing substantial, nothing I didn't know before. It continues on like this for a good while, until I come by the years after their deaths. The people of Anselm might have loved Lord William and Lady Elizabeth Ermengarde, mourning their passing, and held them in high esteem in the years after. But it was their daughter that was remembered fondly by the townspeople. If her parents built this town, Lady Charlotte was the one who made it prosper. Remarkable, considering it was a period of recovery from a bout of plagues that killed half the town's population, including her parents. What's surprising, though, apparently her time was also marked more than superficial changes to the place. She moved things, changed laws, altered old customs and traditions. If they were done on a woman's whimsy, he doesn't say, but she seems capable enough for more than that. Something doesn't sit right with me. The gist of it is, the town she rebuilt, it's what eventually grew to become Luxburn City, while the nearby Anselm village remained as it was, a relic of the old. A frown swiftly forms on my face.
So, why is there a need to hide this?
One by one, I try to recall every lesson I've gone through, every book, paper, and journal I've read. None of those even mentioned this. It's always the lord and lady of the house, their endearing child, always an afterthought to those anecdotes. The one who always took the one who always took her life in the end. Now for someone who restored a town from the brink of collapse, or brought new ideas to it. Is it because she's a woman?
That pisses me off.
Granted, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Not all aspects of her can be considered admirable. But this is history. Some parts are bound to naturally delve into unpleasant territory whether I like it or not. Witch hunts, for example, became common near the end of her life. Oh no. No. Which would have been completely unremarkable and might have gone to become a mere footnote in history if it didn't involve Lady Charlotte and the very slaves she saved. It caused quite a stir, enough to leave almost a week's worth of clippings. The girl was eventually burned, condemned by an entire town, at the word of Lady Charlotte alone. But this doesn't really have anything to do with this curse, does it? Unless that woman following us and this slave are the same person. A tale of revenge? How cliché. However, with the lack of accurate photographs, it's impossible to tell. Maybe if I squint, the illustration would start resembling her. But in my field, it doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. I'll be the laughingstock of the community.
This isn't going anywhere.
Mentally exhausted, I take a careful step away from the screen, pressing a palm to my tired eyes. The lack of ample light in the area doesn't help. A headache already threatens to form at the back of my head, yet I'm nowhere near figuring things out. This is simply too much to take in all at once.
I should have asked for someone's help.
Now I'm at a dead end. I start gathering everything around me and placing them back in their respective envelopes for storage. Emotions no longer new after volunteering here a number of times. I didn't make much mess anyway, considering the lack of materials available to begin with. I'll have to look somewhere else. The where remains unknown, though. But just as I'm about to slip the last of the slides in, something catches my attention. My hand pauses, the microphone halfway through its protective sleeve. This is one of the few I've set aside without taking a careful look at it. Seems like a gossip column at first glance, but upon closer look, I slide it back to the reader, gently turning the dials in search of the page. It takes some time, but once the image becomes clear. They must have had this drawing commissioned for this announcement. I don't doubt it. The details are far more intricate, their likenesses likely closer to how they might have appeared at the time. Both recognizable this way, closer to those paintings I've seen in the mansion. However, it's the man standing beside her, Edward Godfrey, according to the article, that caught my attention previously. Her first cousin, and eventually her fiancé. We've got some weird royal inbreeding, perhaps. Maybe it's the posture, the manner in which he holds himself. Or maybe it's the shape of his eyes, though I can't be too certain about that until I've gotten a better reference. Nevertheless, there is a resemblance. He looks eerily like... My head snaps up, glowering at whoever's running in the floor above. Any day I'd march upstairs and reprimand whoever it is.
This is a library, for heaven's sake.
But now isn't the time. I've gotten what I need. Without wasting another minute, I hit the machine's print button for a copy of the page, while my other hand moves to put everything back into storage. A ragged exhale slips from me. Relief, perhaps, or maybe this is already exhaustion. Regardless, soon I'm closing my eyes as I wait for the printer to finish, if only to stave off a headache building up from everything. Sometime I've even begun humming the same song again, for comfort. Despite my doubts about this, despite all the tension in my shoulders. This may be a small find, but at least I can start somewhere. We can start somewhere. There's a way out of this. I know it. The printer sputters to a halt. However, its sound isn't what makes me snap my eyes open. A feeling, a chilly brush of air behind my back. Brief enough for something sickening to suddenly lodge itself in my throat while I take in my surroundings. It's that suffocating sensation again. creeping to every part of me, crawling under my skin, draining me little by little of any strength. From that day in the mansion, from that brief moment at the school, without delay I grab the paper and make a quick beeline for the door. My whole body freezes. I hold my breath, not daring to make any noise. For a little while, only the sound of papers crumbling under my grasp fills the room, the excitement from earlier gone instantly, replaced by a cold, seeping dread spreading through my limbs. But more than the fear is the anger. It pains me to hear her using my own student's voice against me, and more than once I believed it was really her. She has no right. Though she hasn't made a move, if there isn't a wall behind me, I'll probably take a step back. Anything to put distance between us, no matter how small, as long as I'm out of her reach. But I steel myself, because if I do fall back, turn away from her, I'll be left with no way out. I am not dying here.
You think you scare me?
Don't be so rude. I'm waiting.
I'm not afraid of you, you spook. This is one scuds woman. You aren't getting into an early grave without a fight. Come at me.
I expect she'll lunge, prove to me what a monster she is. Instead, all she gives me is a smile, twisted and gnarled. It's as if time has crawled to a stop at the sight of it. A split-second decision, and before I know it, my body shifts. Eyes closing in anticipation, hand grabbing whatever's solid enough on the nearby table and hurling it at her. I don't bother looking if whatever I threw hit its mark. I run, as fast as my legs can carry me, despite my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. But in this maze of bookshelves, with the whole place almost void of people, is even a place safe enough that I can escape to? Head for the door! You head for the bloody door! If there's one, it's out of this room, out of this place, as far away as anyone can get from her. I can think about the rest of what I can do after I'm outside, when there are other people I can ask for help. When she's not chasing after me like this. There's no hesitation in my steps as I race for the restricted section's door, head downstairs and barrel straight for the library's exits. Towards safety, in a desperate bid for my life. Library rules be damned. I can no longer hear her behind me, but I'm not taking any chances. A breath almost escapes me as I near the door. A little more, when out of nowhere, a library cart careens from a blind corner and slams to my sides. My back hits the floor with a hard thud, the impact completely knocking the breath out of me. A copper tang of blood gradually spreads over my tongue as I fight to get my bearings back. I force myself to move, even with the excruciating pain coursing through my limbs. The exit's almost there, if only I can. But there's no moment's respite. The next thing I know, there's a heavy weight atop me, and cold digits slide around my neck, tight like a vice, pressing, closing in, leaving me gasping for air. Through my blurred vision, I can only make out the hateful gleam, the spite in her eyes, as she looms over my body and her grip on my throat grows tighter. Desperation kicks in. My nails dig into her wrist as I struggle against her firm grip, trying to pry her fingers away. Oh, God! Oh, God. Ah, shit. Shit. Oh, God. Ah, please. Come on, fuck. Yes! Oh, God. I don't think twice. My limbs are moving on their own before what I did could fully register in my brain and my lungs could recover. Behind me, she lets out a cry, sharp, loud, and thunderous against the empty walls of the library. But the fear her wails brings compares nothing to the relief washing over me when I finally make it out. My knees buckle as soon as my feet hits the pavement, its surface cold and hard against my skin. I've only been in there for a few hours, about 1 or 2 probably. I I don't know anymore. It feels like an eternity all the same. My breathing hasn't slowed down yet, and I don't expect it to after going through that. I probably look the most undignified creature on Sunday morning right now, out of breath, dishevelled, slumped here with a bloodied lip and all. But at present, I simply can't bring myself to care, even when a few passers-by start giving me strange looks. Stare at me all you want, I don't give a single shite. I'm alive. I'm safe. This isn't the end yet, but I am safe. And inside my bag is something that could get us out of this mess. Nothing definite yet. I don't want to get my hopes up, but it's still something. If Isabella is here, I'm sure she'll feel the same. She'll even be the first one who'll put her faith on it. Whatever this will lead us, wherever this will lead us to is a victory on its own. Now, all that's left is to find the others, the rest of us trapped in this bloody nightmare. Right on cue, as if in answer to my previous thought, my mobile phone lets out a beep. I pick it up, simply hoping it'll be one of them. Only it's a voicemail that greets me. From Ashton. There's a pang of disappointment, of course, but it brings some reassurance that nothing's happened to at least one of them.
Hey, Becca, call me back when you're free. We need to talk. ASAP.
He ends it right there, the message less than a minute long, curt and gives nothing away. I let it ease my worries regardless, and do as he asks. Because this, too, is another triumph for us. One less thing to worry about. Okay, so that was the end of Rebecca's story, and we move on to Ashton Frey. Oh boy. Yeah, maybe the ghost just wants a kiss. You know, maybe just a little bit of love and affection and everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. Parties have never really been my thing. They're always such a hassle and take so much time off my day. Prior plans and commitments cancelled, all for the sake of playing along with others.
Welcome, welcome everyone.
I hated them even as a child.
Please, make yourselves at home.
But Mum often insisted. She'd slick my hair back, put me in one of those stuffy dinner jackets, and if there was any children around, urged me to make friends. Never mind how utterly loud or tedious it was all for the sake of keeping up appearances. I think the ghost is pretty. She's pretty in a kind of like creepy and unsettling sort of way. Japanese ghost girls for the win! And the Countess is cute, thank you. She's exceedingly lovely, and she knows it. She's so arrogant. Never mind how utterly loud or tedious it was all for the sake of keeping up appearances. To some extent, lies have already surrounded me, long before I've chosen what I wanted to do with my life. Luckily, there were easy ways to tune everything out, and much to my mom's frustration, I always managed to sneak my CD player along. I kept myself into my music and my own little world, till I learned to observe. It's a simple matter of awareness, really, and for someone with keen eyes, a skewed necktie or a simple flick of the wrist alone could tell volumes about a person. I still don't like parties, especially ones as big as fancy as the Wright's housewarming. However, when there's actual reason to go to them, I figure they're not too bad.
Be careful with Shirley, alright?
Besides, like it or not, it's all part of the job. I'm here on a mission. One that has the name Luke Wright plastered all over it. You'd think a man would want to remain inconspicuous after his name was linked to several high-profile crimes across Luxburn. Granted, most of it would have gone cold over the years, having stagnated without any lead or evidence, but that still doesn't make him any less suspect. Yet, here he is, throwing a party in his own backyard. Though, having observed the man this past year, I'm not even shocked. He craves it, the damn spotlight, constantly yearns for attention like a neglected puppy. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why he's moving to be found in his own party. But that's not the problem here. What pisses me off is how far his reach extends, how close he has creeped into the lives of the people I care about. Again, like a stubborn itch you couldn't be rid of. First, Professor Clark, then Isabella. I also spotted Z-Man here a while ago, and now there's also Rebecca. Apparently.
Ashton?
Becca, what are you doing here?
I was invited.
Really? I had no idea you were friends with the host.
That explains things, and makes this difficult all the same. As if getting a contact among the staff to sneak a name onto the guest list isn't hard enough. The guy almost ditched me last night and might have packed another setback on investigation if it weren't for my generous tip. Then here comes Rebecca, another person to mind.
Well, it's my parents, actually. But that's beside the point. What are you doing here? You hate parties.
I still do. I'm just here on behalf of a friend.
A necessary lie. I can't bring my own friends into this any further than what they've found themselves in. Because if Luke Wright so much as harms a hair on either Zach or Rebecca's heads, there'll be hell to pay. Worrying about Isabella's brief dealings with him is stressing in itself already. Okay, prefer your girls 2D with big anime boobs and booty and worship Cthulhu. Well, I'm glad that you're open and honest with what floats your boat. I'm sure there are many out there who have similar taste to you. Monster Girls for the win, though. I doubt he'll attempt anything in front of other people, though. I would tarnish his glorious reputation, and he values appearances more than anything. That doesn't necessarily mean he isn't capable of it, more than in fact, and on the off chance he does something, I wouldn't be responsible for my actions.
That's rare. Do you have someone with you then?
Nope, just me. I won't be staying long.
Well, if that's the case, maybe you and I can...
For Zach and Rebecca's sake, however, I really hope this will just be another housewarming. Even though something tells me it's everything but. Call it a detective's intuition or whatever. But when Luke Wright's involved, nothing good has ever come out of it. Can't let my guard down here. Even more so when a familiar car slows to a stop and out comes...
Chief?
My presence here might be odd at best, but I have an excuse. One that this man handed to me himself a year ago, along with a heavy dose of flattery for a newly promoted detective inspector. Can't exactly say the same for my good old boss, can I? Though to see him here, chatting it up with Luxman's rich and famous, isn't such a big surprise in itself. No disrespect meant, but the guy is obviously a social climber. What is surprising is the fact that he seems all too eager to mingle with a person of interest's wife. Just what the hell is he doing here?
Ashton, what's...
Sorry, Becca. I need to... There's something I need to check for a bit. I'll talk to you later. Do you have a ride home?
No, I had to take a cab here. My car wouldn't start this afternoon. But what about...
What the shit is going on here?
I told you to get that old thing checked before, didn't I? You can head back with me after this. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya. Be careful, okay?
Hey, be careful! About what exactly?
I don't want to draw attention to myself either. At least not until he's given a proper reason to spoil his little party.
Thank you for the invite, Anna. Husband still missing, I see.
I should be saying the same of your darling Rochelle Lee. The doctors again.
For now, the best I can do is wait and remain inconspicuous, especially with Chief here, whose motives are dubious at best. If it means having to pretend I don't know Zach and Rebecca, or forcing myself to rub elbows with people I barely know, let alone like, then but so be it. I can't involve anyone. Wandering is out of the question as well, when there are guards and civvies stationed here and there. Sure, getting past them is something I could do with ease, but I'd rather not right now. When I'm one of the few snooping and roaming about, it'd be best to try and avoid doing so when there's a crowd of people. And if their interior designer's drunken claims are to be believed...
Yes, well, what's about Luke? Should we file a missing persons report now, or
Do you want to wait 24 hours?
He's around.
You know, I can tell if someone's bluffing.
It all comes down to how well I'll play my cards tonight. With a good hand, this party is going to give me a breakthrough. I need to crack Luke right, or something to prove my suspicions wrong. Maybe find out what kind of game my boss is also playing. I've had an inkling before, a few hunches tempered down by how much of a bumbling fool the man appears. But one does not simply deal with the riots and get invited to a party they host, without wanting anything from either of the two. Or it's the other way around. So, with a last weary glance at the two, I head into the ballroom. I just hope this will not complicate things further. Shit. By the time the party's in full swing, night has fallen, yet there still isn't a Luke Wright in sight. The man can be quite ostentatious, but this? Frankly, I'm impressed. I don't even know how many hors d'oeuvres I've already stuffed my face with. Oh, that looks good! Oh, spicy deviled eggs and whatever the fuck that is, but it looks good! And I miss red wine. It's too hot to drink red wine. One too many, probably. The servers are already giving me a stink eye every time I saunter over to the buffet table. Blame your employer, not me. He's the one who has the guts to show up late. Besides, most of the guests' idle talk is concentrated in this area. Despite standing under the same roof with the very people they're whispering about, some just couldn't resist. I might as well keep an ear out for any useful info.
Is Suarez still fixing that tech problem? Tech problem?
It's been 3 years. Sooner or later, the Blighter will put 2 and 2 together.
He might have already.
If the red tape I'm being slammed with these past few months isn't suggesting anything. That or someone has been pulling the strings. I wouldn't be shocked. This case would not have gone long if Scumbag didn't have a mule of some kind in the force.
Shush you, we all know Suarez just wants an out.
I knew he was bad news the day the merger with Evans Incorporated happened. Fair. Glad I did not have to deal with that. But keep it down, someone might hear. The wife especially.
This kind of negligence has always been an advantage, but sometimes I wish I could be smashed drunk while doing this. Having sharp ears also means you get to hear the most unsavory things. Who cheated on who this week? One person's motive for bashing someone's skull against a wall, or a father's excuse for burning his own daughter alive, that sort of stuff. After a few years it gets tiring. You get desensitized to it. But humans could also be downright awful. Sometimes there simply isn't enough brain bleach in the world. Sadly, the wine is a no-go tonight, and mostly for show. I'm up for another drive later, for one, and I definitely want to be sober in case anything comes up. And something always comes up in assignments like this. A detective inspector dying of cardiac arrest, for example. Because I can feel the moment my heart grinds to a halt, the second I shift my eyes to a corner of the ballroom.
Hannah Wright.
Some will say I'm acting a touch bit paranoid, and maybe I am. This is a party and she's the hostess. It goes to say that she'd take time to mingle with each of her guests. But Hannah Wright, née Evans, isn't without her fair share of accolades. At least to the public, she doesn't seem like it. Unlike her husband, she's the one with the business sense, not to mention the impressive track record needed to manage a company. Or effectively hide whatever irregularity there might be. She's clean, as far as my agents and I have found, but it doesn't rule out possible involvement with whatever her husband is up to. Even with Z-Man's personal opinion of the woman, there are certain gut feelings you really couldn't shake off. Hell, Luke Wright came out clean in previous reports, until I bothered to take a deeper look into it. What I found may not be sufficient to bring anyone to trial yet, but it's enough to nurture suspicion. This may be a bit of an overreaction, but no one lasts long in my line of work by being careless.
You would catch his eye a lot better if you wore nicer clothes, don't you think?
Didn't realize the housewarming was going to be this fancy. I would have gone with a nice dress if I knew.
Nothing to be worried about then. She's probably even more careful with appearances than her own husband, having grown up with the spotlight focused on her. Yet, even knowing that, the anxiety stays. Has been there since the party started. I brushed it off earlier. Who wouldn't feel edgy, right? I've gone undercover in a party hosted by the very person I'm investigating. That, in itself, is risky, and has plenty of rooms for error. Usually, though, the tension passes around the first half hour or so. I've been trained to remain composed in situations like this. However, with each second I spend here, it only grows heavier and seeks to overwhelm. An odd feeling that somehow someone is watching me instead. It's been like this since last week, but I should already be used to this. People would be looking at me, no matter how small or big of a blip I am on their radar. That's what they do in these things. But when the feeling of eyes burning into my back lingers longer than necessary, I've been looking around every now and then to try and catch the culprit. No luck. And despite my efforts to push the sensation as far down as I could, tiny pinpricks continue to sting the back of my head, and the ghost of a cold touch creeps up my limbs, until my gaze switches back to Rebecca and Hannah Wright. She stands there, dark-haired and dirty, sticking out like a sore thumb. Even so, no one seems to notice. Though she's looking away from me, her mere existence here strikes. Disturbs. A sense of tunnel vision binds while I stand stock still and gape at her, like my life depends on making sure she stays where she is. I feel trapped in her presence, until another guest bumps into me, yanking me out of my stupor. Only then do I realize I've been holding my breath. Before I could figure out what happened, she's gone. A quick scan of the room yields no sign of her. The party continues as if nothing's amiss. I'm not really one to judge, but I'm sure someone like that would not have been allowed in a fancy thing like this. What has the security been doing? Are they really that incompetent for someone so distinct to easily get in without notice? There should have been an outcry by now, particularly from the host. She's been standing almost an arm's length away from the woman, and yet she simply continues her talk with Rebecca.
Oh, the professor! And your little Becky!
My parents couldn't make it since they're in Scotland right now. And Mom says hi, by the way.
Is there something in the food then? Then I'm starting to see things? It couldn't have been the wine though. I'm every bit as sober as when I first stepped off my car. The hors d'oeuvres? Why would anyone want to do that? Why would Luke Wright want to do that? He's fishy, but I couldn't see why he'd ever think it'd be a good idea to lace the food he'd serve in his party, with someone like Chief Lee on the guest list to boot. How could you not love that face? She had lovely eyes. Has. She still has lovely eyes when they're not filled with malicious, revengeful spite. He has been linked to narcotics trade, yep, however, that kind of tactic is below him. That much I could tell. Unless there's a mass murder waiting to happen here tonight, which I highly doubt. So.
What the fuck was that?
But there's no time to look deeper into this, even if I want to. Not when a telling silence comes upon the room and draws everyone's attention to the main doors of the ballroom.
About damn time.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Enjoying the party? I hope I'm not too late in welcoming you all to the Wright Mansion.
I've been tailing this guy for a while now. Before that, I heard stories from previous officers who tackled this case, none of which are pleasant. Mind, I'm not counting the incident with Professor Clark yet. Pleasant is glossing over the gravity of it. While Wright's good at covering whatever shady stuff he's doing, he's shown to be a really rotten guy. At least, that's the case when he thinks of none of his peers are around to judge him. I've lost track of how many counts of verbal abuse and harassment cases the guy could be pinned with. Fuck, he even tried to make a move on Isabella back in the open house, right in front of his wife. Standing in the same room as him doesn't make me want to punch him any less. Actually, the urge becomes stronger. The protocols, my case first and foremost, my own opinion of the man shouldn't get ahead of my purpose here. If you want to put him in his place, it should be in court, with all proper charges filed against him. And I'll only be able to do that once I gather enough evidence to pin this bastard down.
Welcome one and all to our humble abode. Tonight, if you have yet to find yourself in your roles, you are our ladies and lords of the court of your king and queen. If you would excuse my presumptuousness. So, enjoy the feast that has been laid out for your senses as we only allowed the best to be served. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone!
Suppressing my annoyance, I prepare to step away from the crowd. Amidst the cheers and claps, now is as good a time as any to move. Try to find that something the McCullough woman talked about. In the first place, I have no plans to actually shake hands with the slime ball himself. A fake smile is plastered on my face while I pretend to listen to one of the other guests gossiping about him, all while slowly inching out of the ballroom. Unfortunately, before I could get any further...
Are you feeling ill, Rochelle? Perhaps you need to sit down and...
Rich people only have two ways to resolve their mess. Either they quietly deal with it behind closed doors, or they create an even greater problem out of it, and just blows up in everyone's faces one way or another. Fun.
No! Shut it, you mutter! I ain't talking to you! I'm talking to this scumbag over here! You bloody bastard standing there with your smarmy smile!
Not even a few seconds in and this is already proving itself to be a big public spectacle. Why spend money on a television when to buy daytime soap operas? You could just go to one of these parties and see the action unfold in real life. You get free food too. Really, if I was an actual guest, I'd just take this as some sordid form of amusement.
Watch your tongue! You're on thin ice, Rochelle. Where's your husband? Who even invited you?
But I'm not a guest who's here for a good time. I need to focus on him, even through this whole sorry tale. So I wait. I listen. I observe. Interesting, isn't it, though? That the Chief Inspector's wife... The morning after starts off quiet. Even the whole of Salem Mall residences seem unusually still. The open hallway when I step out is devoid of tenants, no sounds coming from the other units either. It's almost as if something's brewing on the horizon. A peaceful night's sleep still does wonders for the mood, though. I can't even remember the last time I've slept without anything urgent interrupting. It's a nice break from all the bad news lately. If it wasn't for the insistent buzzing in my pockets waking me up, I'd sleep in. The ringing has stopped before I can move somewhere private, but sleep has also been effectively kicked out of my system by then. Pity, I could have used a little more rest, till I have to face the other storm. Of course, I owe Rebecca an explanation. It doesn't matter if it's the whole truth or another hastily spun tale, although I haven't really figured out how to go about this yet. Unlike Zach and Isabella, who don't usually ask questions and are content with what little I could share, Rebecca's rather quick on the trigger. It will have to be set aside for later, though. The Chief's name stares back at me, almost as though it's mocking me. Sad. It would probably be... Sorry, his ringtone's getting to me, it's awful! It would have been nice to just chill after last night and maybe half listen to the news. Sure, it's the same thing we've been hearing lately. Still beats standing outside in chilly Luxburn morning on the phone with my boss. Sighing, I answer it, if only to get this over with. Yes!
Where are you right
Now,
now?
that's a tone I didn't expect from him at this hour. Just thinking how this will go already gives me a headache. Immediately I reach up and pinch the bridge of my nose to stave it off.
This is why I won't ever drink myself senseless.
Valtharis! Thank you so much for the resub, holy shit! Thank you, I really appreciate it! Oh. Sorry, thank you so much. Ah, you're awesome. And welcome back to the Blue Rose Respite, great to see you again.
What was that?
Nothing, Chief. A pleasant morning to you too.
He's probably calling to rag me on something or complain about his wife, which is really none of my business unless it affects my case. It seems like the usual rich man cheats on his wife deal. Though I would have followed it up on it if it were someone else's wife. But figuring it's the chief's, hey, I trust him to come clean if the missus is related to the Wright's shady dealings. This is why I left before they even hauled the woman out last night. Not going to go around investigating cheating husbands and wives, when it's probably just that. Chief appears to have a different idea of mine there. Oh, sorry.
There's nothing pleasant, thing. Anyway, where are you? I told you millions of times before to keep your lines open.
He did, and not only him. Zach, Rebecca, Isabella, all of them have said the same thing numerous times in the past. But I was undercover last night. A phone call is the last thing I want to happen, when there are other things I need to focus on at the time. Besides, we have radios and work-issued phones. Why isn't he using those channels if this is urgent?
Just woke up, sir. As awesome as it is to hear your voice this morning, it really is early. If you could give me a few minutes just to wake myself up, that'd be swell.
No need for that. This won't take long.
Is something wrong? Am I needed at the precinct ASAP?
Oh no, everything's good over there. Just... look, kid. Pray. Don't take this personally, alright? You're off the Luxborn firm case. Start today.
Well, I did not expect to hear that, either. This must be some kind of cosmic joke. I allow some awkward seconds to pass. Chief must be pulling together another one of his awful pranks. Out of this bad mood or a severe hangover, maybe? Everyone knows that when given the chance, he exercises no control with his drinking. If it wasn't for his wife causing a stir, he'd probably be trashed an hour in at the party. He likely drank more after they threw her out of the ballroom. Besides, his sense of humour has never been good. It's just infuriating most of the time. But when he doesn't follow it up, if I sound a tiny bit frustrated speaking to my own superior, I'm not the one to blame.
Wait, no. What? Are you kidding, Chief? Is this one of your practical jokes again? The temps won't say anything about it, but
It's not that. They're orders. From the higher-ups.
Ah, the higher-ups. Yes, my favourite word. Since when do the higher-ups ever care about what the criminal investigation department did? As far as I could tell, they don't give a hoot if CID is filled with cold cases, as long as we keep the spending low. When I need to view those old case files, though, they're locked away in the archives. You're going to have to check with the higher-ups. I need access to the reports, see if the higher-ups will allow it. Every step, every move in this case, there isn't one that hasn't been gated by some authority. If it's not the chief, it's the commissioner, or so they always tell me. It makes one wonder why they even bother assigning it to anyone. Not a single one of them has done anything to help move the case. They wonder why it has taken this long to even hint of progress to show.
you can't just drop this on me. You can't just take me off like that.
Yes, I can. And I'm sorry, Ashton. You're a good detective. One of the best I've seen in years, but...
3 years, Chief. 3 years.
3 years since that enormous tech leak blew up. Since Luke Wright's name was openly linked to several nasty dealings within Luxman's corporate world, some of them involving deaths. 3 years, and I was the only one who made it this far. Made much progress that officers with more experience weren't able to do when they handled this case. Just within a year, and with barely any help from that damn brass at that. Of course I'll be pissed.
Do you know what would have happened if I didn't work my ass off on this thing? If I didn't dedicate a whole year of my time on it? It would have gone cold, like every fucking case Luke Wright has been linked to. I saved this from getting thrown into the archives, sir. I'm getting close. If you could just...
I'm fully aware of what you've done, Trey, but the Commissioner hasn't been happy with your progress. Still too slow by their standards.
Too slow? Well, what about those reports I filed? I've documented every freaking thing for them. I've given you every important lead I can gather. Isn't that enough?
They need results, not a bunch of research papers. Not one baseless assumption after another. Concrete proof, Frey. I'm really sorry. They've already made a decision. They're going to pass this on to someone who's been in the force longer. Someone who has more experience.
Someone who has more experience?
They meant nothing by it, but you're still too young to work on a case this big.
Chief, I've already done more than what those old farts ever did behind their desks. All of it, within just a year of being assigned to this.
Watch your language, Frey.
I'm not some damn rookie fresh out of training. I'm as qualified as they are.
Futile, I know it is. They never say it's within my earshot, but from the very minute I stepped in their precinct, the lot of them underestimated me, from their stares alone to the assignments I get. To them, I'm still just a kid, too young, too green, too inexperienced. And once they pull that card on me, every argument I have gets thrown out of the window. No matter how logical it is, how much I've accomplished, what the record says, or the amount of work I've put in every investigation they've thrown my way.
We're all aware of your skills, kid. You wouldn't have that badge and rank if you weren't good enough. However, this case is just not for you. Too high profile, too risky to put a good officer like you in harm's way.
Oh, I hope you're okay, Valtharis. That sounds painful. I hope it's just going to maybe leave a bruise and it isn't too badly damaged. Oh, that sucks. So sorry. Can he even hear himself? That reasoning is odd in itself. No one joins this line of work without knowing the dangers of it.
Don't I get a second chance? You said it yourself. I'm a good detective. It'll just be a matter of time before we can close this.
It doesn't matter what I think, Frey. You're off the case, and that's final. I expect all related files and documents on my desk by Monday morning. And don't even try to go touch anything. I know how hard-headed and determined you are.
Chief, please. A few more weeks. I'll have the proper evidence left on your desk by then. I swear it won't take longer than that.
Afraid it's too late, boy. I've already informed the other officers. You aren't to be allowed access until you've been given a new assignment. Help just keep out of the precinct, Frey. Take the weekend off.
Seriously, Chief, is this about last night? If this is about me being at that party, I have a good reason for...
You were at the party.
Oh, whoops. It makes me pause. His wary tone, the sudden careful note in his voice. Slowly a frown forms in my face, my eyebrows knitting together in confusion. Much as I hate to say this about my own boss, there's also suspicion in it. Hard not to think of it that way, seeing how he reacted around Hannah Wright last night. Is he worried? Why should he be? Anyone was invited. I didn't doubt for a second why he received an invite, even if his presence was questionable. Something wrong and I've unintentionally walked into it. All I have is this sneaking suspicion, but when one looks at this from a different angle, put everything together, why the hell I've been taking off the case might be for the same reason he was there in the first place. Fuck.
Yes, Chief, I was. For a good reason. What were you doing there? I know we don't have a strict rule against attending functions, but that was...
He coughs and almost sounds like he's choking on his own excuses, lies. I don't want to accuse him of anything, yet. He's someone I've respected since I joined LPD, even with his bizarre sense of humour and tendency to procrastinate. He's obviously competent enough to get the job done. He wouldn't be Chief Inspector of Luxman Police if he wasn't. He wouldn't last years in service without some track record backing him. Unless that, too, is a fluke. And what's backing him is not something, but someone. Oh. Oh, shit. Fucking hell. Fucking shit.
Chief Harvey, about last night with the...
Why does it matter, Frey? This isn't about that.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? I'll recite the whole damn oath I've taken upon being sworn into service if I can, but at this point it seems too late to remind him of that. He has probably already moved from serving and protecting people to serving and protecting his own interests. Damn it. I've suspected the upper brass of this, even the lower ranked subordinates in the force, but from my own boss? Shit, no wonder the leak didn't lead anywhere. Someone closer might have been pulling the strings. I might have been set up to fail long before the fucking case had been assigned to me. But I don't want to just give this up. I don't want to believe I've wasted an entire year for this. I don't want this to be the kind of news to tell Professor Clark after all those promises I've given the man.
I just want to know, sir, at the party, with Luke and Hannah Wright, you were...
Monday, Detective Inspector. First thing in the morning. Every copy of the files you have, I want to see it all on my table. Understood?
This isn't...
Frey, am I understood?
What else can I do other than smile and nod? With my own superior expecting an answer, using that tone, brushing my questions off as easily as discarding a dead body.
Yes. Yes, sir.
He cuts the line as soon as the words are out. You're off the case, Frey. Just like that. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, I will sadly have to call it a night. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Apologies for the flubs occasionally while narrating. It's been a really long day, and my voice is kind of all over the place from recording earlier today. But I hope you all enjoyed tonight's stream. I had a lovely time as always. Thank you so much for the bits and for the subscriptions. It's all greatly appreciated. Thank you. And I cannot wait to see you all for Friday Fright Nights as I start a new game which I've been having a lot of fun with, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. So, but that is for another night. Everyone, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week. For those of you who've been lingering in the background and you've enjoyed the show so far, consider hitting that follow button and clicking on for notifications. We would love to have you back at the Blue Rose Respite. So, all of you, take care, have a great rest of the week. Try your best to beat the heat if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. It is swelteringly hot in a number of places. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, stay wicked and wonderful. Good night, guys.